Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot about football. Football is in the air. College football beginning again tonight with Tulane. Also, Saturday night with LSU. Saints with their final preseason game tonight. And, of course, to break it down for us, we got a great panel for you. Mike Fazende of WGSO Radio, and also Coach Rick Gaille with WGSO Radio, and a whole lot of other stuff. We're going to tell you all about it as we go forward. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on the panel tonight. And Mike,
good to be here.
We always start off letting folks know a little bit about what's going on. Tell folks a little bit about what you're doing.
Fazende on Football, it's my blog. Getting ready to crank it up right before the first game of the regular season. And I'll come on with you every Friday from 11 to 12, and we talk about everything involving sports, mostly concentrating on Saints and LSU and Tulane, the local stuff, Pelicans.
No doubt, Coach.
And then I just listen to Coach on Saturday and repeat everything he says.
Isn't it good?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Eric, it's always a pleasure being here. Working with Sports NOLA, writing some articles for them. I hope to have something on Kikaha and the multiple positions he's playing, and then next week the Saints move to a little more West Coast offense. I've got good plans anyway.
Yeah.
Now I got to see if I could execute for a change. But also WHNO TV 20 will be starting Prep Recruiting Insider with Renee Nato, one of all of our friends, next week.
Yes.
And also Friday night, Ken Trahan's original Prep Football Report on WGSO, his 21st year.
Yes.
And Saturday morning with Ken Trahan and Ed Daniels of Three Tailgaters.
And that Three Tailgaters show, the longest running sports radio show in New Orleans. And
the best sports radio
you guys
show.
are going to kick off the Tailgaters, is it Friday or next Friday?
No, the original is this Friday.
This Friday,
yes.
that's what I thought.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'll get it right. But
That's
yeah.
okay. No. Tailgaters on Saturday?
That's it. Original this Friday and Recruiting Insider next week.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Guys, a lot to talk about. I've said on the radio show all week long, especially after what was traditionally is a third preseason game where you really get a real solid look at what's going on with the team. You kind of get a feel for what's going on with the vets because normally they play into the second half. We didn't see that. Sean Payton has made a decision that he is going to look at the back end of his roster. He wants to get the right 53 is what he said. I guess he feels like he knows for the most part who most of his starters are, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And he doesn't want to be in a situation where he lets a player go who could go on to again perform for another team. So he's taking a hard look at the back end of that roster. With that said, I'm just honest. I don't know what the identity of this team is. I don't know who this team is. Mike, we'll start with you first. Do you have any clue who the New Orleans Saints will be in this upcoming season?
I don't know. I think they'll be probably a replica of what they've been the last 10 years, 9 seasons under Sean Payton. I think they'll have a prolific offense, though I have doubt about the wide receiver crew. I mean, anytime you have Drew Brees and with decent protection, you're going to have a pretty darn good offense. Defensively, I'm definitely not sure. A little nervous about giving up a lot of drives, not being able to get off the field on 3rd and long. But there again, they've been playing a lot of subs in from the second quarter on in these preseason games. So hopefully they're all just saying we're going to hold everything back until the regular season starts, and then we'll see the real team. But to now, it's been a little discouraging.
Yeah. Coach?
With the injuries that they've had on defense, they're having to retool right now because with the original personnel that they had, it was fairly easy to identify what they were going to do. Browner on one corner, Lewis on the other corner. They would support Browner with the single high safety, which should have been Jairus Byrd, should be.
Who?
Who exactly? Whenever he's there, and I think that was going to be a critical part that they could play with him and help support Browner on one side. Lewis was going to have to hold up on the other. Vaccaro could play closer to the line of scrimmage, and they had some options with Bro being a nickel or perhaps putting Raphael Bush in the game and using Vaccaro as the nickel and playing too deep. Well, that's all out of the window now. Brown is just barely coming back right now. Lewis, as we're finding out from the national media, is out till mid-season, if not later.
Yes.
So we hope Bird comes back eventually. And I've said all along, and this is going to be a key injury. If Jairus Bird is not there, and he doesn't play like he did at Buffalo, the Saints cannot make the playoffs. I think that's strong with it, because as good as Raphael Bush is, he can't help support Browner with Delvin Breaux having to go to corner.
Yes.
Because with Lewis out, even if Breaux is an adequate replacement, now you've got the second corner over there. You got to give him more support, and now you've got your second nickel back in, and it would be your third dime back. So now that whole thing starts moving downstream, and you're playing with your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh best defensive back instead of your top five. So defensively, that's going to have to get retooled. We know the pass rush is a mess right now.
And I was worried about the defensive line.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I mean,
Now we can worry about all 11.
Well,
man.
That sounds like being a coach. You can worry about everything.
Never stop worrying. Okay?
No.
There you go. Guys, again, we were just kind of touching on injuries. It looks like Keenan Lewis will be out some. There was originally reported 4 weeks. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports has reported 6 to 8 weeks now. Larry Holder on my radio show spoke this week and said that it was originally called a hip injury. But again, the insiders are saying it's a sports hernia. And if it's a sports hernia, again, we've seen players on this team, you have to go through the surgery, you have a recuperation time, so it doesn't look good for Keenan Lewis. But you had to think something was wrong with Lewis last week when I think it was Hopkins who just went right by him. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, that just doesn't look like Keenan Lewis. But again, now we find out again, he's injured. He's out 6 weeks. We've talked about Bird, who again, it's a mystery on what's wrong with him. Is it the back? Is it the knee? Is it a new injury? Who knows? Peyton said he would play by the preseason, unless they're planning on playing him tonight. From what I understand, I got to tell you right now, I don't know if I'd even put him out on the field right now with all the injuries, and just to save him. Even though again, you want some continuity, and of course Browner coming back from his injury, Vaccaro a mystery injury as well. To me, Mike, now the secondary, as Coach was saying, it was the strong suit of this team. Right. Now, I don't know if you can rely on it, especially if you got to go one-on-one on the outside.
Well, now you better get a pass rush, and it doesn't look like they have any kind of pass rush. Just based on the first 3 preseason games, 1 sack in all 3 games. Kaká has been able to get a little bit of penetration off the edge, but other than that, I haven't really seen much. And then if you got all these injuries in the secondary and you keep depleting your depth, you're starting to look like last season's defense, which was a train wreck.
Right.
Because every week there was a new cornerback. They were picking up guys from the street. And you don't want to get into that situation again. So the Jairus Bird thing, I still think it's the back. When the news first broke that he was having a little procedure on his back, I got worried.
Is there such a thing?
There's no such thing.
Yeah, when it's somebody else's back.
Right. And having dealing with that, back injuries for a long time, they just linger on. They never go away. And somebody said, well, it's the same thing Tiger Woods has.
How good
you
has he
noticed
done?
Tiger Woods lately?
That's right.
So I think, and it's kind of scaring me that he may never get over the back injury. So that's just me talking. I don't know anything.
Sure. Well, they're holding him out. They're holding him out for a reason. And again, so they want him ready for the regular season. It'll be interesting to see if he is going to be ready. Coach, you've kind of already touched on it. I mean, look, but to really kind of wrap this up in a nutshell, the bad drafts, the missing free agency are now coming back to haunt this team. Where you get your quality depth out of your drafts. They've gone the route of undrafted free agents, but guys, it's in black and white. You cannot dispute what this paper's saying, and this is a history of the New Orleans Saints drafts under Sean Payton. And before this, the recent cuts, it was an average of 2 players per draft, with the exception of 2013, which looked like a great draft. But again, now you look at that draft that had Tune and Akeem Hicks in it. Only Akeem Hicks is left there. You look at the draft now with Brandon Cooks and Stanley Jean-Baptiste are the only 2 left from that draft. So once again, the Saints are in a tough spot, and one of the reasons why is they haven't drafted well, and the free agents that they paid, they just haven't performed up to what they need to be.
Yeah, you can't be more accurate than that. And you can, you just put the pencil to the paper and look at the numbers. That for a good draft, you get 3. For a great draft, you get 4 getting to their second contract. And we've got drafts that they don't have that number of players making it to the second year or the third year. And if you're a first-round draft choice, you need to be able to contribute sooner rather than later, immediately, preferably, even though Andres Pete may be able to take some time with him because he does need some development. Second round has to contribute right away. Third, fourth, and fifth has got to contribute somewhere. And then 6th and 7th, that's where you get your developmental people. The Saints have been very good in free agency, signing undrafted free agents. Yeah. But that's because their draft choices haven't been very good. That's comparatively speaking.
Right.
They've been good at that.
Yeah.
Your undrafted free agents should not be beating out your draft choice.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, they're bringing in undrafted free agents, and they're beating out their draft picks. These picks, they don't just pick a name out of a hat. They've studied these guys. Right. They've interviewed them. They've talked to them. Okay, this is where we think he's going to fall. That's our guy if he's available. And then the kind of guy that's maybe an afterthought, the undrafted free agent, okay, we bring him, and they're beating out the guys that they really concentrated on. Something's up with that scouting department. I mean, that 14 draft is an absolute abominishment. I mean, it was terrible. Yeah. I mean, one player out of it so far is produced.
It's really amazing when you look at it and you look around the league and you got teams that are drafting around the same place the Saints are, but they have players that are contributing. And as you mentioned, Coach, making that second contract. Right. You look going back 5-6 years, a lot of these guys don't even make it to their second contract that are drafted from this team.
Yeah. And that's how you build. You still, in this world of free agency, you still build through the draft. And you have to draft well.
You try to quantify everything, and not just so you're not just giving opinions, and that's a great way to be able to quantify things. You want facts, and nothing but facts, which is why Jeff Ireland now is in that position. We've seen a big change in results to date anyway from this past draft, where it looks like every draft choice is still going to be on the roster, which is a big improvement from the year before. But that's certainly a huge reason why there was a major shakeup in the scouting department.
Yes. Guys, as we were getting ready to turn the page on getting to the regular season, very vanilla in the preseason, as we know, and we're concentrating on the defense right now. Defensively, you figured, okay, you got Lewis and Browner on the outside. They're gonna match up man to man. You got Browner who's going to be able to roam, and he's not going to be like it was last year when he had a shade to one side because they were afraid of again receivers getting behind the corner. You had a situation where maybe Vaccaro goes back to what he was doing when he was in the first came into the league. Maybe put him near the line of scrimmage, let him wrap up, let him be that short tackle, and let him be the guy that can blitz for you. Maybe you're going to bring, again, one of those linebackers that's going to help you to manufacture pressure because you haven't been able to do it with your 4-down lineman. Coach, I don't know how you can do that now. I mean, I don't know how you're going to manufacture pressure when you're not sure if Bro and Browner can be able to match up man-to-man if you don't get to the quarterback quickly.
Zone blitz, that's where it's going to come from. That's why Dom Capers was the defensive coordinator with the Steelers, and Dick LeBeau was his secondary coach when they devised the scheme to try to confuse the blocking scheme, but yet still play zone behind it, because you're not going to be able to play man across the board to be able to send casino blitzes where you're sending all-out blitzes. So that's why the zone blitz was devised, dropping linemen into short zone areas while you're bringing people from the secondary and linebacker level. It's got to come from a 4-man rush because they can't afford to just play 5 across man-to-man.
I'm glad you mentioned Dom Capers because Dick LeBeau gets credit for creating that, but Capers was a defensive coordinator at that time, and they're just going to have to try zone blitzing, casino blitz. They're going to have to try everything. They just got to try to do it, because that's the only way they're going to be able to even get off the field in situations where you can't guard the receivers for an extended period of time. The quarterback's not going to be able to sit back there and throw the ball. You're going to have to make him get rid of the ball quick, show him blitz off the edge, blitz off different sides to time, but try to confuse them. But you're going to have to create pressure. You're just going to have to.
Right.
That's really their only option now.
Well, and then with that comes you got a lot of young players that are going to have to play prominent roles.
Right. You're going to have to just man up.
Well, not just that. I mean, again,
literally man up.
Yeah.
That's the only choice they have at this
Well,
point.
you're in a position now where you know that, number one, Browner's going to get a lot of penalties because he is a guy, use his hands, 5 yards. He's a very grabby guy, okay? But penalties, missed assignments. When you're putting a lot of young players out there and you're asking them to do a lot because, again, you have a lot of injuries, you got to expect to get missed assignments and penalties. And, you know, again, that was one of the things that Sean Payton has talked about in the offseason, getting back to 06. Well, that was a disciplined team, but that was also a mixture of veterans and guys that they had brought in that really kind of bought into the Payton way. And really in 06, 07, you can get into even as they get into the 09 season, they didn't really beat themselves. Maybe 07, 08, right? The 2 years where they went 7-9 and 8-8 was when they had the problem. But then, of course, they flipped the switch in 09. I think Saints fans are going to have to be patient because I don't think this is going to be a team that's not going to have missed assignments and penalties, especially on the defensive end.
That's right. It's going to take a masterful coaching job to be able to do what you need to do to be successful and yet be able to teach it. Have the right amount in, especially don't have too much in, but as Mike was alluding to, have to create some type of doubt in the offense's mind so that the quarterback, when his back foot hits the ground, the ball isn't coming out instantly because he knows before the snap where he's going with the ball. So there's got to be some type of doubt and confusion created in the opposing quarterback's mind.
And when you have an inexperienced secondary, and that comes from you had to hit the quarterback. You had to give him remember me shots. Because it may be kind of a blessing that you're now we don't want this, but Ryan doesn't have to get overly complicated now. Like last season, when you had Jarish Byrd 30 yards off the line of scrimmage in the first game, and and against Cleveland, defensive backs are looking at each other. Where am I supposed to be? They could be more simple, knowing, listen, all I got to do is guard you. I'm a young guy. I just have to guard you. We're blitzing, and take my chances like that. They're going to give up a lot of plays, but they may create some turnovers in the meantime, you know.
Well, guys, and then again, when you look at it, one of the things they've said this year is they've tried to simplify the defense because last year they tried to add the next layer of the defense, and these guys just could not grasp it. Coach, how do you get to the point where maybe it's too simple and easy for the opposing coaches to diagnose very quickly?
It's a very, very fine line because if you can't execute, it doesn't make any difference what your strategy is. What you have to be able to do, once again, when I talked about a masterful coaching job, you've got to be able to teach what you're going to do and give the repetitions so that you can get the variety. You can make, and that's what was going to be interesting when they had all their people, that they could line up with a single safety, a free safety in the middle of the field. They could play man on the outside. They could play cover 3. They could play cover 3 buzz where the outside linebackers are covering the flat. There's enough variables in there. So if you can't be multiple in your looks and be obviously multiple, you have to be multiple through disguise to let the quarterback think one thing is happening, let something else happening. So once again, it goes back, as I said, a masterful coaching job, putting in as much as you can handle, but not too much, and the use of disguise becomes important.
And Ryan did that in 13. I mean, they had the worst defense in the league the year before, same guys basically, and they went to the top 5. But they lost 2 main cogs of the secondary in 14 with Jenkins and Roman Harper.
Yes.
So they were counting on Jarish Byrd to be there and Vaccaro to evolve a little bit more, and that didn't happen.
Coach, any scenario where you see the Saints being able to get pressure with just their 4 down linemen? Or let me just say 4 players, because again, it may not be 4 down linemen that are rushing the passer.
Right, and it probably will not have to be. Kakaha certainly have to be part of that equation because they're going to be in nickel 60% of the time. So he's going to be as a rush in to the right side. I don't think Cameron Jordan can do it consistently from the perimeter, but I think he can from the inside. John Jenkins can't. He's got a long way to go, even though he did show some improvement from the first week. He's not going to get much of a pass rush inside, so somebody like Akeem Hicks is going to have to kick down to that 3 technique or nose position, something inside. So with Cameron Jordan and Hicks inside, and I'm big on Kasim Adebali. He's got the same motor as Kakaha. He's a year older, a year more experienced. Both of them have high motors, high energy. They really get after you. So with those 4, perhaps they can. And along with that, both Kakaha and Adebali, and even Jordan to a lesser extent, can drop if they need to, and you bring somebody from the secondary, bring an inside linebacker to vary that pass rush. So now you've got 4 people with some versatility and a little more speed, especially on the edges.
And I like a couple of the young guys on the inside, Davidson and Tavares Barnes. I think they're showing some potential. I mean, they're probably a year or 2 away, but if you can sneak them in there with some guys around them and, you know, be creative and cause havoc.
Do you see any scenario where the Saints will be able to rush down 4
with
players?
4 down linemen?
Well, or just 4 players.
I mean, 4 players.
And be able to get pressure on the quarterback.
Unless
I
the
asked the
other-
question because they weren't able to do it last year, and they have not been able to do it in the preseason.
If the other team's in the Hail Mary formation, they may be able to.
Guys, speaking of the young players, Anthony, Kakaha, Davidson, Swan all look like that they're going to play prominent roles on this team. Mike, I'll take you first.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on how they've done so far? Because I'm going to tell you right now, they've given the defense more athleticism, more speed right out the box. You can see it. You're going to have to live with rookie mistakes, but just right now on the surface, as bad as these drafts have been, these guys look like they're going to be able to come in and play for this team.
Well, they're going to have to, but I think you're right. So far, it looks like a good draft just based on the preseason, and particularly, you know, Stephon Anthony, to Kakaha, Davidson. Those guys look like they can really play, and especially Stephon Anthony. I really like him, and he's just going to get better and better. And once he starts instinct, playing on instinct instead of trying to read and react, that's when it's really going to go. So, yeah, I like those guys. I think that they definitely going to contribute, and they're going to have to, especially with the injuries now.
Coach, how about those 4 and anybody else you can add?
Yeah, well, Stephon Anthony, we have to remember, is the kicker in the Jimmy Graham trade. And so the Saints get 2 starters. They get Max Unger, who's a terrific player, and Stephon Anthony, good downhill inside linebacker. So he's fundamentally sound in what he's doing and catches on really quickly, good feel for the game. Kakaha is playing more positions. You know, he's listed as a Sam backer. The Saints do treat their depth chart like they do the injury report, okay? The names that they have for the positions, that's not what they play, okay? But he's playing on the line of scrimmage. He's a pass rusher. He's dropping. He's playing to the weak side, playing to the strong side. So he's the one player that they're giving a lot of responsibility to. He's got to learn how to transfer speed into power because he does have speed. He has some quickness. Seems, once again, a high motor, intelligent guy. But he has not yet been able to power into a defender and be able to manhandle him yet. I think that's going to come as his technique improves, and it certainly has so far. Swan. Goes 1,000 miles an hour.
Got good instincts too.
Yeah, you could see with the Saints draft choices this year, you could see the rationale why they drafted him, and you see some prospect, you see some future, if not some present, in what they're doing. So you certainly have to be encouraged with those. I'd mentioned Andres Pete. You know, there was some questions early on because even though he comes from a football family, his father played in the NFL. He came to training camp out of shape, and especially upper body. He's got, and I thought when they drafted him, his upper body wasn't going to be ready. He's 21. He's got 2 more years of physical growth. His lower body's there. Usually you see young guys with good upper bodies and their lower body's not there. Well, his lower body is there. His upper body has to catch up yet. He certainly shows the athletic ability, and he's going to have to learn multiple positions because I don't know how many other tackles that they're going to be able to keep because he's learning right side, left side, even like the 4th tight end position I believe he's getting some reps at. He's gotten some snaps at guard. So he's having, of all the people that are having to learn multiple positions, you're taking the one with the least amount of experience, but for the roster to work, he's going to have to do that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can't do any better than what Coach just said, but I think Pete is definitely improving. I was watching the game again last night, and around the goal line, I think it was McCown got pressure. He looked like he wanted to hit Josh Hill on a little flare, but he couldn't get there because the pressure was coming, so he rolled to his left. And at first glance, I said, oh, Pete missed his block. But when I looked at it again, he was fine. The gap between the center and guard was opened up, and the defensive tackle made penetration. So I think he's doing fine. Now, he hasn't played against ones yet, but as far as what he's doing in there and what he's been asked to do, I think he's doing, a decent job.
He's going to need a year in an NFL weight room.
Right.
And again, the way they've set this thing up is let him learn multiple positions. Hope they don't have to put him in the game this year.
Right.
And then next year, as much as Zach Street means to this team in terms of leadership, you look at his contract, you look at where the Saints are in terms of dead money already. You know, they may have to cut him loose. You know, and simply move Pete into that spot. You know, you don't want to have to do that, especially when you start looking at, you know, Bryce Harris and what he brought to the table in terms of the third tackle, which is one of the reasons why they went out and got Pete.
Right.
You know, they saw they had injured the tackle position. By the time they get the third tackle, Breeze was running for his life. So again, I understand why they did it, but I think a lot of us would have liked to have seen a defensive player, especially an interior defensive player, at that pick, but it just didn't happen.
The only value at that pick was Bud Dupree.
Right.
And then he dropped all the way to the mid-teens. But the wide receiver from Louisville was there, and I can't remember his name, and Devontae Parker. And with the trouble they're having at receiver now, he looks like I don't know, even I haven't followed him.
Sure.
But maybe you take a shot. Because with the 13th pick in the draft, you want impact.
This was a Jim Finks pick. It was Jim Finks coming back from the dead to pick a big guy in the first round.
He loved the big guys. Jim Finks loved the big guys. You're right.
True.
That's a great point.
I just hope it wasn't one of these Monty Williams,
Jimbo
Austin
Culver?
River deals.
That's right.
Where again, I know the Pete family. We're really tight. Sean is really tight with the Pete family, and you know what? I know the kid since he was in playing bantamweight football, and let's bring him in. Look, the kid's smart, the kid's big, the kid's going to be a great player. The problem is, again, in a first-round pick, you want immediate impact.
Right.
You're not going to get that out of him this year, just not. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. We come back. I want to continue to talk about, again, maybe some of the concerns. We'll flip to the offensive side of the ball, and then we're going to talk about some of the things we're encouraged about on offense and defense. And then I want to get into, obviously, the LSU Tigers and the Tulane Green Wave. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE-TV, 6 p.m. On Friday nights, 10 p.m. on WLAE, and on the Pelican Sports Network on Friday nights, 9 p.m. each and every Friday. I'm Eric Asher. Mike Fazende, Rick Gaille are our guests on the panel tonight. We'll be right back.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. WLAE is currently looking for partners to underwrite this program and other programs on our station. Underwriting on WLAE is affordable, brings exposure to your cause or company, and helps support our nonprofit mission of providing television programs that educate, inform, and inspire the viewers of Greater New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana. If you are interested in learning about program underwriting on WLAE, please contact us at 504-830-3703.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Great panel for you tonight. Mike Fazende of WGSO Radio and Rick Gaille of SportsOnline.com and a whole lot of other stuff. We'll tell you about that a little bit later on as we go forward. Guys, we've talked about some of the things that we have concerns about. We're going to continue that. We're going to look at the offensive side, and then we're going to get into some encouraging things that we've seen so far. The wide receiver position, I am very, very concerned with. All we heard from again, the guys that had a chance to eyeball practice, and look, I question each and every one of them on my show on a daily basis. They're standing by their assessment of Brandon Coleman, that he's looked lights out in practice, and that sooner or later they believe it's going to show up, again, game time. But right now, to me, Coleman is an unknown. To me, I look at Snead and Joe Morgan as 3 and 4 on this team in terms of the wide receiver position. Mike, you're the guy that originally said this, I want to say way back in 2006 when Peyton first brought his first crew in of no-name receivers, and you said, Eric, I'll never forget it. We were sitting there and on this team, I really believe that receivers are interchangeable because Breeze is so good in the way the system is. That has played out over the last 10 years. I just wonder about this crop of receivers, if they're going to be able to fit in.
Yeah, I said in 07 though.
It was in 07.
Because I saw David Patton come in, and he was cast off from New England, and he's got 50 catches for the Saints, and he's running that same Marcus Colston special where he goes between the linebackers. He lines up on this side and goes between linebackers and safety all the way across the field. And they ran it to Coleman last week, and they ran it to Josh Morgan, and both plays worked. That's their bread and butter play. But I'm concerned with separation, and to me, you don't need a lot of speed to create separation. If you're guarding me and I can get separation from you and the ball's coming, that's all I need. And receivers have a knack for that, and he seems to have that. And I haven't seen it yet in Coleman, where he just gets that separation. If you're guarding me inside, I'm going to turn my body to the outside type of deal. And until he learns that and becomes able to catch balls in traffic, then he's just going to be a receiver who's tall. Mm-hmm. And not much more than that.
And you're probably not going to see it from him. He's come a long way. Coleman we're talking about. He's come a long way because last year he could not catch at all.
Yes.
When we were at the indoor practice.
Make that description, please.
Oh, the ball hitting his hand, bam, was a slap. You could hear it. And I'm standing next to someone. I said, well, you listen to that? That sounds like a defensive back trying to catch the ball. Because the ball would just make that slapping sound, and it should be absorbed by a wide receiver. Well, this year he is doing a much better job in catching the football. His technique is much better. Now, when we're out there watching practice, he stands out because he's 6'6", and so he's easy for all of us if you're just standing around observing practice. And when he catches a ball, it happens pretty easily, and we're usually not watching scrimmages to where he's being closely guarded, and nobody's watching the offensive lineman down at the other end.
Right. Yes.
So it's easy to see him standing out. But he, as you mentioned, he has not learned how to use his body yet. They have tried to use him more like they did Jimmy Graham, running inside seams or deep crosses, and all those. You've got to be able to use your body to screen the defender, because Breeze knows with a player like that the back of your helmet is always open.
Yes.
And so even if the defender is in front of you, if he throws it to the back of your helmet, you should be able to turn away and catch the ball and use your body to screen the defender. He's not there yet. And it's going to be a while because he's just learning how to catch the ball. Right. Okay, so it's one process after the other. I think you've got the numbers exactly right. Joe Morgan's got to start standing out, and I'm surprised that he hasn't as much as we know that he's capable of doing. Josh Morgan's not there. Yeah. He's just a guy.
Just a guy.
He's and they don't need just a guy there. You got to be where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there. Do it that way all the time, the way it's supposed to be done.
Well, Josh Morgan, this is his 8th or 9th season, and the ball that Garrett Grace gave to him up the seam in between two defenders, you have to catch that ball.
You have to catch that. That's right.
That is an NFL catch. Running across wide open when the ball's put right there, I mean, me at my age, I could do that, but you have to be able to catch the ball knowing you're about to get hit. You can't worry about getting hit, and that's when these guys who have just learned how to catch, now they got to learn how to catch and absorb a hit, and a lot of the creating your own space is instinct, and sometimes if a guy doesn't have that instinct,
well, I think that, and we've talked about this before on the show. The main attribute you got to have in this offense, you got to be able to catch the football. That's number one. I don't care what position you play. Got to be able to catch the football. In Coleman's case, you look at size, number one attribute, speed, number two attribute, 3 is catching the football. Okay. On the other hand, you look at a guy like Willie Snead, catching the football, his main attribute, and
all he does is catch the ball.
I mean, look again.
Create space.
When you look at Breeze, he's got patience. But he doesn't have patience in the regular season. If he's not confident you're going to catch that football, you're going to get yourself open and shield the ball, protect him as well. He doesn't need interceptions. He doesn't need to go in front of that microphone and talk about that INT because the receiver didn't do his job. Ultimately, he's not going to look your way. He's going to look another way. So the reason why I brought Joe Morgan up is Devery Henderson clone now. He can take the top off the defense, and in the running game, he can block. And again, you can't have too much of an emphasis on that when you look at what the Saints do in terms of their running game and using their receivers to block. So that's why I'm looking at those two guys as the top 4. And to me, I think that Coleman makes the team, but maybe he tumbles down to number 5. you know, if you really look at it. But guys, that receiving core does not scare me. An aging Colston and a Brandon Cooks, who again now will be bracketed. He's going to have to get open, and he's going to have to know he's going to get pounded, because not only is he going to have a corner on him, there's going to be a linebacker or a safety there that's going to be ready to deliver a hit when he catches the football.
Well, it's going to be up to Sean Payton to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And you can do that through proper tactics and strategy.
Motion.
Benjamin Watson is going to be an important cog in this, because what I've noticed that there's a difference, a slight difference in the tactics, in that they still have the vertical game, and that's what the basis of the Sean Payton offense, going all the way back to Air Coryell, the vertical seam game. But now they're doing more horizontal work underneath, and that's where Benjamin Watson and the running backs become very important. And now all the running backs are going to have to catch the ball. If Benjamin Watson and the running backs can catch the ball, now you cannot afford to really start paying a whole lot of attention to Cooks, because the defense is not going to know initially where Cooks is lined up, and I doubt that they ever give the defense a static target with Cooks, that they're going to move him, not just by alignment, but in motion, return motions, and the like. So through proper tactics, proper strategy, you can reduce the inevitability of the defense over-concentrating on Brandon Cooks. But it's going to come down to, as you mentioned, everybody's got to catch the ball. Yes. And we've seen a lot of that going forward, that the running backs and Benjamin Watson are going to be key cogs in the offense.
Saints have been spoiled. It was Colston for so long that you could count on in the red zone. Then it was Jimmy Graham. Now, I think they're still searching for someone in the red zone and what they're going to do there. You know, do they have the ability to run the football in? I mean, they like to put the ball in Breeze's hands when they're in the red zone. And right now, when you look at the red zone offense, again, unless they're just holding things back, it just doesn't look as dynamic as it has in the past.
Well, I mean, you said that, and I'm thinking Marcus Colston on that little seam route in the red zone. I mean, how many times did that work? Jimmy Graham just out-physicaling somebody for the ball. And you don't have the Graham aspect, and Marcus Colston doesn't have a lot of those catches left in him. And you're right. They're going to have to find somebody. They have to work Brandon Cooks in the equation, find a way to get him in space.
C.J. Spiller, if he ever comes back.
C.J. Spiller. How about Murphy?
Marcus Murphy.
Yeah. I
mean, it's been a pleasant surprise.
He's been the gem of the draft so far. If you ask me, I mean, a 7th-round pick, and he's returning kicks. He's playing running back. He's running between the tackles.
And catching the ball at the back.
And catching the ball.
Yeah. Use of the running backs, and that's the strength of the team. And right now, except for Spiller, most of them are there anyway. We haven't even talked about Tim Hightower, who probably doesn't have much of a chance of making the team because of Marcus Murphy. But he's going to play for somebody in the league. Once again, going back to tactics and strategy in the red zone and the goal line. And I separate the two. I hate the red zone term, by the way. That's a defensive coach's term for stopping the other team. Okay, but from the 7-yard line to the 20 is the red zone. Inside the 7 becomes the goal line. They're going to have to be able to use all of the tactics and strategy available to them. Different running backs, multiple running backs, and the concept of throwing somebody open on the goal line is probably diminished. Marcus Colston's catch radius has receded. It's not there like what it was before. And so throwing the ball back to Josh Hill, a back shoulder Josh Hill, that's not going to be there anymore. So they're going to have to be very creative in their tactics and strategy. Really have shown very little of that in the red zone and the goal line so far.
I thought they had a great chance in the goal line situation in last week's game. When I mentioned that play earlier where McCown got flushed out of the pocket, because it looked like Josh Hill had worked his defender back. It was isolated one-on-one. If McCown would have had that chance to let Josh Hill work back toward the front cone, it looked like they may have had something there, but again, he got flushed and he had to go to the other side, and there was nothing available.
Guys, we've kind of mixed in some encouraging things as well. And again, Ingram and K-Rob being able to catch the football is encouraging out of the backfield right now. It doesn't make the Saints so one-dimensional where you know whatever alignment they bring in, you could pretty much know, well, they're running with this guy, they're throwing with this guy. Marcus Murphy has been really, really an encouraging player, even with again, Spiller out to at least maybe, as Scott Alexander had reported a couple weeks back, to after the second game of the season before he comes back. The defense we mentioned, much more athletic. Some of the young guys, what they've been able to do. Anthony Kakaha, Davidson, and Swan. What about Kevin Williams? How big is he for this defense? And then does he have to stay healthy for this defense to be the anchor against the run? Because we haven't talked about the run a lot. But again, teams ran on the Saints at will at times last year.
Kevin Williams has still got some gas in the tank. I went back 2 years ago to look at video when he was with the Minnesota Vikings to see if he played just on one side like he did with Seattle. He only played on the right side. And when he was with Minnesota, though, he did play both sides. That's what he has to do with the Saints. So he's still got some gas in the tank. He's still a very good player. Great technique. He's the one defensive lineman that keeps his pads under the opponent's pads. So Kevin Williams is a good pickup, and yeah, he's going to be important because all the other young guys that we mentioned, the Davidsons and Barnes of the world, still are not NFL ready down after down. They could specialize in perhaps in specific situations, but Kevin Williams is an important aspect in the base defense.
If they can get anything from Kevin Williams, what he's the player he's been, I think it'll help Akeem Hicks as well.
Agreed.
And you know, it could be
And Jenkins.
Well, you figure Hicks to be the starter next to him, and then you know, I just think he's saving himself. I mean, he's a plus 10-year veteran. He's just working for the regular season right now. We'll see what happens then. But all that stuff, if you mentioned a great point, Eric, and kind of glazed over it. All that stuff we talk about creating pressure and blitzing and that, if they can't stop the run, that's all out the window anyway, huh, Coach?
Well, the difference between college and pros is that in college, if you can't stop the run, the other team will keep running.
Right.
In the pros, if you can't stop the run, they're going to throw the ball 60% of the time anyway. So it's a strange thing. But yeah, when you look at a Jenkins, a Williams, an Akeem Hicks, and a Cam Jordan, you've got 4 respectable linemen in early downs to be able to stop the run with that. And that's why Kikaha has got to learn to play some in space so that on first down, especially with first and second down, those 4 more experienced hands can get in the game. John Jenkins has got to, even though he's in much better shape than he was at this time a year ago, he's got to do a much better job internally than he's done.
I'm a little more encouraged with Kikaha than I was in the first game. I think he's improved since the first game.
He's gotten better every snap. Yes, he has.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you guys. Offensive line, I would say that Unger and the tackles solid as they come. Jari Evans has looked good, okay, the last couple of preseason games. You don't want to expect a lot out of him in the preseason, but again, he's able to move. I mean, they questioned his wheels last year. He just looked like he couldn't run anymore. At least you saw him on a few plays really getting out and blocking on those sweeps, on those screen passes where again that the Saints, those are Saints mainstay plays. But got to ask the question: quality depth and Lolito question marks to me.
Lolito I'm encouraged because I questioned him from a year ago.
I know you
did. And he's, even though he had a very difficult start against New England, bounced back and ended up with a solid game because he was very bad in the first series, to where he's been solid. So I'm encouraged. Jari Evans, as you mentioned, was really bad against Baltimore. Played much better the last 2 weeks. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel there, even though I still have some question marks about how much he really does have left. And I think you're exactly right on the 2 screenplays that he's gotten out in front. That's encouraging. I mean, we're looking for some encouragement here. We're hoping that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train.
Don't want to be all negative.
That's right.
I mean, let's have some little bit of encouragement. How about the offensive line for you? I am worried about the quality depth. When you look down the line, it's going to be McGlynn, Hickey, and Clemente. Those look, along with Pete, look like the 4 that they can keep on this team. They may only be able to keep 3.
Right.
I like Clemente out of the guys you mentioned, but you're right. I mean, and in the NFL, pretty much depth is where it's at. I mean, once you start losing your starters, there's not a lot of depth to go around the NFL. But Max Unger, I think, is the key. That's what the Saints were missing in the middle last year, with Goodwin having a subpart, hitting the end of the road for his career.
Right.
And I love Max Unger. If he could stay healthy, I think Evans between Unger and Streif, and Lolito between Armstead, who I've heard is having a fantastic camp. And in the game, he's been looking really Willie Rofish during the preseason. So
that's high praise.
I mean, that's high praise, but
honestly,
he's been looking really athletic at that spot. Right. So I am optimistic about the offensive line.
Guys, I'm going to put you on a spot here. Again, look, final cuts have not happened yet. Coach, how good can this team be? Where do you think they are? We still opened up the show saying we're not real sure. I'll go on. I'll say this, as I've mentioned. Now with the injuries we've seen in the defense, man, those first 4 games, they're going to be tough. Before I was saying, man, they got to come out of it 2-2. I think they're lucky to come out of it 1-3 at this point. But I think you got a lot of young players. They're going to get better the longer they play, the more plays that they get an opportunity to play in the regular season. And you look at the schedule, you know, I think the Saints will be a better team second half of the season than they will be the first half of the season if they don't get decimated by injuries. I'm saying 9-7. Sure, they could go 10-6, but they could be 7-9. Right. But the weakness of the division, the schedule at this point, I think they can win their division.
Yes, they're capable, but I'm right there with you. I'd have thought that perhaps they could win 10 2 weeks ago. Now I'm leaning more to 8, somewhere in that neighborhood. When you look at the beginning of their schedule, the Arizona Cardinals, and that's something that both Tulane, LSU, and the Saints have in common. Their first 3 or 4 games are critical to the success of their season. But when you're looking at the Cardinals, Buccaneers, Panthers, Cowboys, and Eagles, you're looking at 2 teams in the division. You're looking at 2 teams that they would be battling for wild card spots, because that's where the Cardinals or either the Cowboys or the Eagles, they're all going to be involved in the wild card hunt. So they've got to, as you're exactly right, they should be better the second half than the first half, but they can't fall behind in the beginning of it, because you know there's going to be somebody. The division can't be as bad as they've been, because of all things, yes, they all have their franchise quarterback. Mm-hmm. And usually if you have a franchise quarterback, the book says, let's see, the book says right here, you're supposed to have a pretty good team if you've got a franchise quarterback. Well, all 4 teams do now, but they've got to wish most of all that 8 wins can win the division, because it's not going to get you a wild card.
Mike, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm same thing. I mean, it's a weak division, 8 games, 9 games will win it. You know, looking like it'll win it. They play a weaker AFC division with Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And now I was thinking Houston may not, but Houston looked pretty good. Yeah. But in Tennessee, Indianapolis, so you know you can win your division. You win you split the AFC division you play, and then the other teams, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Cardinals are going to be tough. Mm-hmm. They're going to be just tough wins. Cardinals opening game at home. Cowboys' offensive line is the best in football.
Yeah.
And the Saints' defensive line is not their strong suit.
True.
At least on paper.
Right.
And I think 3 of the first 5 are on the road, or 4 of the first 6.
They're at Arizona, at Carolina, at Philadelphia, so 3 of the first 5.
3 of the first 5, and at Carolina.
Yes.
Yeah. The Cardinals is critical, because that's the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
You lose to the Cardinals, then they're a game up on you. Not just because of the victory, but
Yes.
if you, at the end of the year, if you're tied with them head-to-head, becomes
well, you're almost forced to win the division at that point, because you don't want to get into that tiebreaker.
Right.
Let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about the LSU Tigers. Brandon Harris is now the starter. For the most part, you look at it, with the exception maybe the linebacker and the defensive line, and that's only because we don't know what they have behind them. This team is too deep across the board. Mike, your thoughts on the LSU Tigers? You know, some media members have them going to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Others have them rated as the most overrated team in college football.
Yeah, it's somewhere between that, Eric. I don't see them in the Final Four just yet, but you know, before 2011, people were saying if we can get some play from the quarterback, then they have a shot. But this defense is not even close to 2011's defense, huh, Coach?
I agree.
Especially on the front 7. So it's going to be tough when you got to go to Alabama. In the first 3 weeks, you got Mississippi State and Auburn. And I keep saying you got to go to Syracuse after that. And normally Syracuse would be just a throwaway game, but you're going to the Carrier Dome after playing 2 physical SEC games in the beginning of the season when everybody's healthy. So if they can make it to the SEC championship game, that's going to be a monumental victory for them.
You think that Syracuse game is a trap game?
I think it's a trap game. I do. That's just me talking.
Coach?
That's a good point, because they could get lost in the SEC shuffle. Certainly, if you win the SEC West, you're going to be spoken prominently.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have 2 losses. I don't think anybody in the country can have 2 losses and get in the Final Four. Not because remember, this whole playoff strategy was to keep 2 SEC teams from being in the finals.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the Big Ten is better. The Big 12. There's a chance, you know, they're going to try hard to get the Big 12 champion in the Final Four. The Pac-12 is going to so it's going to be hard to get a team with 2 losses. I've got a lot of confidence in Ed Ogeron to get the defensive front
a lot of young
playing
players
better.
on that
A lot of
defense.
young players, and the man is a terrific a terrific coach, and that's been a weakness. Even though they've had NFL players on the front, they haven't played like NFL players.
Hurt them maybe a little bit. I heard that they're going to be much more aggressive under Orgeron and Steele now than they were under the Chief, especially when you talk about that defensive line.
Do you know any defensive coordinator that takes over and says we're going to be more passive? That's standard. Oh, we're going to be more aggressive. Yes, but I think the players will play with greater confidence because Orgeron is very specific in what he wants, knows how to teach it, and can get players to where they need to be. So that's why I have confidence in.
We're already hearing about Arden Key, the incoming freshman, and the kid from Carr as well, the defensive end. Was making splashes in fall camp, but I'm anxious to see what Orgeron, who's a defensive line coach extraordinaire, what he can do with Frank Heron and Greg Gilmore, because those two guys were really highly talented coming out of high school, especially Heron, and they haven't really done anything.
Well, guys, I think they mirror the Saints in a bit. I think, again, because of some young players that are going to be playing at key positions on this team, especially on the defensive line, this could be a better team maybe as you get into the middle or toward the end of your season. Because, again, these guys are going to get more reps. They're going to understand what it is to go to an SEC stadium and play before one of those SEC crowds. But overall, again, Mike, I'll ask you, where do you think this team goes? How far do you think it goes?
I've been saying nine wins. They make it because they're going to win when they shouldn't, and they're going to lose that game where everybody's scratching their head. So I'll put the ceiling at 10 wins.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That they have a chance to get to the SEC championship game.
It depends
on
the quarterback play.
Yeah, which would be usually, it would probably take more than 10 to get there because of it. But realistically, just short. If we had to pick right now, Harris, of course, is going to be that's a wild card. I think that he's very capable. I think Anthony Jennings is exactly where he needs to be because he showed 2 years ago in the Arkansas game that in dire straits, in a difficult situation, he could come off the bench. In fact, he does better doing that. He has difficulty performing over time. And that was something I made a note to myself, that greatness is excellence over time. And you see a lot of people that can do things. That's why there's career backups in the NFL. They could do something for short periods of time in short bursts. They have trouble carrying that out over a period of time. So I think both of them now are in positions that they can succeed. Cameron is still, the jury is out on him, what kind of job he could do as an offensive coordinator.
Now, because Coach was talking about Anthony Jennings, I always said he's that quarterback. I don't know if he lulls the defense to sleep or what, but he always makes that big play, that one big play, the 4th and forever against Florida, the coming in against Arkansas, the touchdown throw against Alabama. Where did this come from? But that's the type of quarterback he is. But Coach is absolutely right. Harris should be the starter.
At Tulane right now, again, you got a veteran team. Hard to believe you got a veteran team. You got guys that he redshirted early that are now playing, and then you got guys that again, in recent times where there's no red shirt. You got to play. So he's got a veteran team there. Coach, what do you think about this Tulane team? Probably faster and more athletic than we've ever seen, maybe in the history of the program. Okay. What do you think about this Tulane team?
You could be encouraged about what's happening there. You could see the plan, how they're doing things. You're seeing improvement in the offensive and defensive fronts. They certainly have got to keep Tannehill clean in order for them to be effective offensively, and the defense has really got to be able to step up. None of that's going to matter, however, if the snapper can't snap it to the punter and complete it every single time, and that the kickers kick it between the pipes.
Well, I got some bad news.
None of that other
Coach.
Stuff counts, okay?
Got some bad news for you on that one. I had Todd Graffinini on the show, Voice of Tulane Green Wave this week, and he says the place kicking still a question mark, which again is mind-boggling to me, because that's not a hard position to fill.
Not for an academic school.
It should be. Should be again. Throw it out there. Somebody in the nation wants to go to get a Tulane education.
Exactly.
Okay, they can kick between the uprights, and to me, that is still one of the big question marks that I thought may have been solved. It has not been solved for Tulane.
Maybe they can do it this. Do you ever see the high school coach in Arkansas onside kicks every time? You see that guy?
Yes.
He never punts, and he onside kicks, and they win every game. Maybe Curtis Johnson can get a tip from him. Maybe they could try that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Again, the kicking game for Tulane after it was an Achilles heel last year. But, Coach, I mean, I'm with you. I think that, again, this has got a team with speed and athleticism, and now it's a mature team. Finally, again, this is, they built this up. It reminds me a little bit of a few years back. It was
Larry Smith?
No, it was before Tommy Bowden. Gosh, I forget the name.
Greg Brown, Larry Smith.
I forget the name of the coach.
Vince
He was
Gibson.
only here for a cup of coffee, and then Bowden took over. But Bowden took his players who he had redshirted, and all of a sudden added a few.
Buddy Tevens.
Buddy Tevens came in. Remember, he redshirted everybody in the beginning.
Yeah.
Didn't play anybody. Of course, lost his job. Bowden comes in. Boom. He turns that into again an undefeated team.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Tulane?
I agree. I mean, I counted up. They have over 300 starts between everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a veteran team. Darren Monroe has been starting since a freshman. Parry Nickerson's back there. The offensive line all comes back.
300 pounders across the board.
Across the board. Tanner Lee's a third-year sophomore. This is his time. So you got everybody
Running
experience
backs.
is there. Running backs, receivers, tight end. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. They got Duke right off the bat, right?
Yes.
So they're going to have an exam. First week
Duke
of school
tonight.
is going to be an exam. So we're going to find out quick.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what they can do. I really am. I've been on Tanner Lee since high school. I really like
I
him.
remember.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. Coach, talk about Tanner Lee, maturing under fire.
Things have worked out for him exactly as we thought, because in doing a bunch of high school games, broadcasting a lot of high school games along with Ken Trahan, we got a chance to see Tanner and meet his family and the like, and think the world of him. And we were happy when he got the red shirt, because he wasn't physically ready at that particular time. And then we hoped that his next year he wouldn't get brain damage as he was growing with the offensive line. So he's going to be very solid. Once again, they got to keep people away from his feet, and I think they're going to be creative in moving him a little bit, not necessarily getting him to the perimeter, but don't just put one spot on the ground where you can rush to this spot and get to him. So, and be creative in the play action game. I'm encouraged about an offense when the biggest question mark is, can the receivers get open? Because you can work that, right?
Plus,
but
they have athleticism.
If you can't block them and you can't run it, then it doesn't matter how open the receivers are getting. So I'll start from the inside, work to the outside. Defensively, can they make teams throw the football? And you can't have a more difficult start for them, because Duke is going to spread them out and throw the football. Georgia Tech is going to be wishbone-like in the flex bone. And those are two huge games against two academic schools that Tulane should be playing against.
David Cutcliffe is so good at that.
Oh, yes,
isn't he?
indeed.
But I
Mike,
think I
final
have
word?
an answer for the kicker situation of
All right, go
Tulane.
ahead.
You have some eligibility
Yeah,
left,
oh,
don't
yeah,
you?
yeah.
So we can all get him in Tulane. 'Cause
I'll tell you what,
that might
folks,
be the tricky
I
part.
cannot lift my leg that high anymore. Those days are long over with. I can tell you that right now. Is this a bowl team?
Oh, I don't know. What you think, Coach? Schedule's kind of tough, but
I can't say no right now. We got to.
bowl team. I'm with Coach.
Let's say yes now.
They're
Great.
right on,
Tulane's
they're
a
right
bowl
on the cusp.
team, my
They're
friend.
Right on the cusp. Tell you what, it's going to be. Hopefully, it'll be bananas
I think
tonight.
it's going to be an
at
exciting
Yeoman.
season for all the local teams. Now, whether it's a good, exciting, or bad, it's yet to be played. But
Trent, you
I'm
still
looking
have time
forward
to get out there. Go.
Yes, exactly. No doubt. You can
No,
leave
in
now.
1 minute.
Yeah, exactly, 1 minute. Coach, you know where that clock is. I'm glad to see that. Coach Rick Gaille, Mike Fazende, thanks so much for being on our
Always
panel
fun.
tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets. You can always catch me on the radio, 9:90 a.m. WGSO weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on the TuneIn Radio app, and at ericasher.com. You can listen live, download the podcast, and you can also check out every single episode of Inside New Orleans Sports as well. And we got a brand new show coming up. Again, it's the Eric Asher Show. It's going to be live at Legacy Kitchen in the Warehouse District. Tyrone Hughes, former New Orleans Saint, now Saint Hall of Famer, will be my co-host. Saint players will join us every Monday night, 7 to 8. And again, that's at WGSO 990 AM and at Legacy Kitchen in the Warehouse District. They got a social hour. We invite you to come on out and join us. It's going to be a great time. Again, special thanks to Mike Fazende, Coach Rick Gaille, also to Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and my director, William Hill. My name is Eric Asher. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Hopefully next week we're talking about wins across the board and, of course, a great football season for all the local teams. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Good evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.